payment and find the car you need all on your phone.
In Osceola, Georgia, former beauty queen and teacher Tara Grinstead went missing in 2005. She has never been found, but now one of her former students has been charged with her murder. Tonight, we take a closer look at his confession, which the defense says was coerced.
This defendant was not arrested for the murder of Tara Grinstead until he confessed to the murder of Tara Grinstead.
In Las Vegas, Nevada, a young boy is found dead in a freezer, and his mom's boyfriend has been charged with the murder. Tonight, another development in the case as the boy's mom files a lawsuit against her now former boyfriend. What does this tell us about what happened to little Mason Dominguez?
Child abuse, neglect, or endangerment, and first-degree kidnapping resulting in substantial bodily harm.
On the docket tonight in Kern County, California, the murder of the Cal City toddlers, Orrin and Orson West. Tonight, the defense on the offensive as the attorneys for the accused murderers, the boys' adoptive parents, go after the DA.
The safeguards of the accused and the fight to preserve those for Trezell and Jacqueline West begin now.
Plus, in Louisville, Kentucky, 4-year-old Serenity McKinney was found murdered. Her mother is locked up and has been charged in the case, but now Catherine McKinney is 7 months pregnant with another child. Tonight's 13th juror question: what should happen to this baby when she's born? Buckle your seatbelts. This hour of closing arguments starts right now. I'm Vinnie Politan. Great to have you with us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And today, inside the courtroom, was the case of Tara Grinstead. This is a beauty queen and teacher who disappeared in 2005, and it took 12 years to solve the case. 12 years, but the guy that they got, RyanDuke, according to investigators, confessed to the crime. Confessed to the crime. They found their man, and he was good for the case. And as you know, for investigators, this is the game, right? This is the game when you have a suspect, someone you believe is good for the crime. When you bring him in to talk to him, as long as they don't, invoke their Fifth Amendment right, you want to get them to confess. And investigators believe that's exactly what happened with RyanDuke. But there is something that we've learned through the years. I've learned as a former prosecutor and covering cases for decades, and I think something that you have learned in following trials, documentaries, and cases. Sometimes those confessions, not 100% true. You saw it right here on Court TV, the trial of Skylar Richardson. She was accused of one of the most heinous crimes ever. She was accused of burning her newborn baby alive. It's something that she confessed to. We saw the confession. We heard the confession during the trial. We saw it. It was recorded on video. She's in the interrogation room admitting to investigators that she lit her newborn baby on fire. The only problem was the baby was never burned. So while investigators during this interrogation got her to admit to burning her newborn child, it never happened. Investigators thought it happened when they were interrogating her, but they found out later from the expert who told them the baby was burned. The expert said, no, I was wrong. I got it wrong. The baby was not burned. But they got her to admit to it. So there are such things as false confessions. False confessions are real. That's why in a case like this, the murder of Tara Grinstead, where we've got a confession, it is an incredibly persuasive piece of evidence. It is direct evidence. Right? You've got the person committing the crime saying, yes, I committed the crime. That is direct evidence. But like any other piece of evidence, it needs to be evaluated. And the jury has to take a look at it, and they've got to weigh it, and they've got to figure out, okay, yes, there's a confession, but can I rely upon this confession? Was this confession coerced? Is it for real? What were the circumstances surrounding the confession? So while I, as a prosecutor, absolutely love it, right? It's a great piece of evidence I bring to a courtroom. Investigators love it because then they just got to dot the I's and cross the T's. Case is over. But again, it is just a piece of evidence, can be the best piece of evidence, but needs to be evaluated. And that's what was happening in the courtroom today down in Osceola, Georgia, where RyanDuke is getting ready for his trial. Court TV legal correspondent Julie Janae joining us live tonight from Osceola with the latest. And a lot happened in court today, but I want to begin with the issue of this confession because it's such a big part of this case. What happened today in the courtroom? What did we hear? What can you tell us?
Today, these parties got clarification on what could come in and what is not coming in. We saw in the scheduling order that there was a question of whether the defense was going to ask for a Jackson Deno hearing, whether they wanted the court to make a decision on whether this was a voluntary statement or whether it was coerced by police. But they actually clarified today that they've withdrawn that request for that type of determination by the court. Doesn't necessarily mean they won't make insinuations to this jury about the circumstances in which RyanDuke shared information with authorities, but that issue is no longer on the table. These parties took care of it through stipulation, and we understand that they're no longer objecting to, at the court level, that this was a voluntary statement to police. But whether or not it's a confession and whether or not it's the biggest part of the evidence against RyanDuke, there's still a dispute. We heard that from defense attorney Ashley Merchant saying that it's actually Bo Duke's statement that's the most important, but the prosecution saying that is not the biggest part of our evidence. Take a listen.
Bo Dukes is a witness against him, whether we call him or the state calls him. He is the reason that we are here. Ryan would not be sitting here if it wasn't for Bo Dukes.
And again, the reason I say if we are the ones that call Bo Dukes, because at this point, Judge, we are still discussing strategy. It's our position that we can prove this case against the defendant without putting Bo Dukes on the stand, mostly because he confessed. So the idea that the only reason we're sitting here is because Bo Dukes gave the defendant's name is not accurate. This defendant was not arrested for the murder of Tara Grinstead until he confessed to the murder of Tara Grinstead. Certainly, Bo's statement to other people that got back to GBI assisted in the investigation, but there was no warrants for this defendant, Mr. Duke's arrest, until RyanDuke's arrest, until he confessed.
Here's a look at the order on admissibility of those statements by RyanDuke that was signed by the judge today at his bench. In part, it reads that the entirety of the defendants, RyanDuke, his verbal and written statement given to Special Agents Schudel and Holland on February 22nd, 2017, both pre and post Miranda, are admissible at the trial of this case. So we understand that this jury is going to be hearing or going to be allowed to hear that statement that was made by RyanDuke, but how his defense is going to object to it. We know they have mentioned that they want to bring experts to discuss false confession theory, but there are a couple other hurdles that they have to get over before those experts can come in, Vinny.
Fascinating, big part of the case. And you also mentioned Bo Dukes. Bo Dukes is the one who, according to prosecutors, helped RyanDuke, his friend, dispose of the body. But it seems from what we heard in court today that Ashley Merchant and the defense team is going to go after Bo Dukes as being the one who actually committed this murder. So was Bo Dukes in court today? I know that he was brought to the jail. There was an order to bring him to court. Did he testify? Did he say anything? What happened?
Bo Dukes showed up. He was brought into the courtroom. He took the stand, but he declined to testify today. There was a question of whether or not his statements in this motions hearing could be used against him, whether they could be incriminating, whether he has a Fifth Amendment right not to make any statements, and he didn't have a lawyer present to advise him. So the judge gave him an opportunity to speak to a public defender who was local to this area, so he could come back tomorrow and possibly make a statement, or he could say the same thing he said today. Take a listen.
Mr. Dukes, I understand you've spoken with Ms. Mullis, your attorney, is that right?
Yes, Your Honor.
And do you intend to offer any testimony today?
I do not, Your Honor.
You do not? All right. In that case, I'm inclined just to continue this until another day when Ms. Mullis can be present.
So that is the status of it, and it's also keeping pending the motion to reveal the deal. That's what Dukes was here to testify about, whether or not he thought he would get some benefit from prosecutors or leniency based on his statement that Duke was the one who committed this. So we'll see if we hear from him tomorrow, Vinny.
You know, the other thing that's really shocking is how these Bo Dukes looks and how RyanDuke looks right now, because we've seen their mugshots, we've seen them at their worst, and they have cleaned up immensely. They look like different people. That could have some effect as well. Now, you're down in Husel, Georgia, small town, and I understand you went back to the crime scene today. What did you see? What did you find out?
Vinny, it's been 16 years that this community has been dealing with not only the disappearance, but now the litigation of this case. The home looks very similar to what we see in those crime scene photos. Here's a look at what we learned today. This is the location where authorities believe Tara Grinstead, a 30-year-old teacher and former beauty queen, took her last breath. This home is about 2 minutes away from the courthouse where there are murder charges pending against one of her former students. Grinstead lived here alone. And when authorities arrived after she was reported missing, they noticed something in the yard, a glove that was taken into evidence. But perhaps more ominous was what they didn't notice about this home. There was no sign of forced entry, no evidence that there was a struggle. Was Grinstead even killed here, and was she here before she disappeared? And this carport down this driveway would have been her car, found parked outside of the home, unlocked. No evidence of whether or not she had left here on her own. It's unclear how a suspect would have gained access to Grinstead's home. She lived close to a lot of neighbors and houses on this street. The house sits on a corner, and the woman who lives here now told us that there's only 2 doors into this home, no back door, just this door at the end of the driveway and then another that faces the front yard, and both of those face a row of houses where neighbors would have had an unobstructed view. People who live in this area, they say there's still a mix of allegations and rumors about what truly happened and lingering questions about this well-known woman who lived in this house. Vinny, I can't stress enough how small of a town this is. It's in the middle of rural southern Georgia. When you walk around, people know each other. They wave at you when you go by, even if they don't know who you are. There were roosters walking around this area, but it is a neighborhood with a lot of houses. Her home was not at all in a secluded area. It is in really the most populated area of Husel.
Absolutely. Fascinating look at the neighborhood. I mean, the house does look almost exactly the same, and it's striking that the homes are next to each other, and I thought it was much more isolated, and it's not. That's going to be another interesting issue as we watch this trial coming up. Julie Janae in Husel, Georgia tonight, thank you so much. Let's bring in our think tank tonight. Joining us in Atlanta, Georgia, trial attorney, family law attorney, and law professor Randy Kessler. He's down on the bottom there. In Seattle, Washington, next to him is Ann Bremner. And up on top tonight in West Palm Beach, Florida, former police lieutenant and trial attorney Rick King. All right, welcome to you all. Great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. Rick, let me start with you. Got a confession. I mean, there's a confession. Ashley Merchant and her husband, incredible attorneys, but they're sitting next to their client who didn't get arrested until he admitted to the crime. I mean, that's a big obstacle to overcome.
You know, Vinny, you kind of laid it out in the beginning of this segment, how confessions sometimes aren't what they seem. It's always important to vet the confessions that you get in because, listen, people under extraordinary circumstances and extraordinary pressures say things that they are coerced into saying at times. Now, I don't know what happened in that confession room. I don't know what Mr. Duke said when he was there, but I do know that Ms. Merchant and the defense team have said that there are more than one statement. And there are other statements that were taken that weren't recorded, and I think that's going to be part of the issue as to what's real, what's not real, and what he really said.
And Bremner, there's RyanDuke. Looks a lot different inside the courtroom. It's amazing. But let's talk about the confession versus, okay, the jury's going to hear it. They're going to hear it in the prosecution's case in chief. To me, it's persuasive. But I have sat here at Court TV not too long ago and saw prosecutors play a false confession that everybody knew was false. I mean, but they still played it. I don't know why they played it, but they did. But it's proof that you can get someone to say that they did something horrible that they did not do.
Well, and I was thinking of the Amanda Knox case out here in Seattle. I did some work on that. Remember, they basically told her to imagine what would happen if she was present during the murder in that case. She said, I would have covered my ears. They translated that to mean that she was there and she covered her ears and helped kill the victim. And that took a long time to unravel before she was basically set free back to Seattle. Yeah, I mean it's monster false. That's one thing, but that's not what really happened in this case. I mean, we basically have somebody that gave a full confession in detail, and there's other evidence. So I thought to myself a little bit, there was no challenge like on a 3-5 recall hearing on a facility and then a stipulate. I don't know if that's what I would have done, but I don't know all the details that they had to challenge quote unquote confession. It'll be a battle of the experts, basically. But let's see if it's drugged, coerced, things like that. The jury's going to find out and evaluate that evidence.
Randy Kessler, there's another big part of the case, as we saw Ashley Merchant point out inside that courtroom, which is Bo Dukes. Not a great guy. He's got some, I think he's got some more pending charges that are pretty bad, as well as this disposal of the body. He went to trial, though, Randy. It's not like he was cutting a deal. Say, give me a deal and I'll say that. No. He went to trial, said he didn't do it, then was convicted of doing it. So how do you think that's going to go? I don't know how this is going to play in this trial, and I don't feel like I got much clarity today either, that this is a guy who went to trial, lost, and now what? He's going to be subpoenaed by who? And why would he even say a word on the stand other than take the fifth like he did today?
Yeah, if you watch the pretrial motions today, you get the sense the defense wants him to be up there, and they want to cross-examine the heck out of him. They said even if the state doesn't call him, we're going to cross-examine him. And the judge said, what do you mean cross-examine? And Ashley said, you're going to consider this witness a hostile witness, and we know that if a witness is hostile, the judge can consider them hostile and allow you to cross-examine and to lead and to ask, isn't it true kind of questions. Sounds like they're dying to do that. I mean, they've got to use everything they can. Just like with the confession, if I'm on the jury, I'm thinking, there's a confession. Why are we even here? Why did the guy plead guilty? Maybe there's more to the story. So, they're going to take their shots. They're going to shoot at the confession, and they're going to shoot at Bo Dukes, and they're going to attack his credibility, and they're going to try to insinuate that he's getting something out of this. If he's got to testify or talk bad about, the other Duke, then there's something in it for him. They want to use him because they really don't have much else.
Yeah, but this is going to be a battle inside the courtroom. They're not giving an inch to the defense in any of this, and we'll see. It's taken a long time to get here, but our cameras will be back inside that courtroom tomorrow as well. All right, Randy Kessler, Rick King, and Bremner with me the whole hour. When we come back, we're going to talk about little Mason Dominguez. That's a little boy from Las Vegas who was found dead in a freezer. His mother filing suit today against her former boyfriend who's been charged with his murder. What does this mean? How will this impact the case? We will talk about it when we come back.
right now.
Mr. Townsend, you were given a copy of a criminal complaint charging you with murder, child abuse and neglect or endangerment resulting in substantial bodily harm, child abuse, neglect or endangerment, and first-degree kidnapping resulting in substantial bodily harm.
That was Brandon Toslin in court out in Clark County, Nevada. That's Las Vegas. What is he accused of? He's accused of putting a little boy in a freezer, killing him. This is that little boy. His name is Mason Dominguez, just 4 years old. 4 years old. And he's accused of putting that boy, killing that boy, putting him in a freezer. Unreal story. Our affiliate KTNV reporter Abel Garcia has more on the background of this story because there is much more to it. Let's take a listen.
I spoke to the attorney who was representing Dacia Maldonado, the mother of the 4-year-old Mason Dominguez, who was found dead in the freezer. This is how the mom tells him the whole thing went down. I want to take you back to January of last year. That is when Dacia Maldonado's husband, Eli Dominguez, died. Now we progress a little bit more forward in this story. Brandon Toslin was a friend of Eli Dominguez. He comforted Dacia Maldonado after she lost her husband. Their friendship then turned into a romantic relationship, and Dacia moved in with Brandon in March of 2021. And now we move forward a little bit more. Toslin slowly started taking control of the family until they were trapped. The attorney says Dacia is locked in a room and separated from her children. And that was right there in December 2021 when Mason Dominguez also went missing. Dacia Maldonado and daughter Riley Dominguez were held captive. Now at that point, Dacia had no idea where her son was. She says back in December, Toslin took her son into the master bedroom, barricaded the door, and refused to let her see him. The attorney says the house was like a fortress. He had locks, window alarms, motion sensors, and other security protection to prevent them from escaping. The attorney says he took over all her accounts and cut communication with their family. He says during the captivity, there was never a time the victim could flee with her children. Most of the time, the family was locked in separate rooms. Whenever Toslin took Maldonado in the car, he handcuffed her to the armrest, even when taking her daughter to school, until February 20th. Dacia Maldonado got to have time with her daughter Riley Dominguez for the first time since held captive. Now the attorney says during that time, Dacia coached her daughter Riley and eventually gave her a note to take to school and hand to her teacher. Then on February 22nd of 2022, Dacia Maldonado and Riley Dominguez were rescued. Brandon Toslin was arrested. Mason Dominguez was found dead inside of a freezer. Toslin, the 33-year-old, has now been charged with both kidnapping and murder. He was arrested after police were dispatched to his home in East Las Vegas.
And now we've got some more information tonight on what's happening. An update in this story. The mother, Dacia Maldonado, has now sued her former boyfriend for wrongful death, for killing her son, Mason Dominguez. Kind of unusual to happen this quickly, number one, and under these circumstances. Let's bring back in our think tank and get some insight into what exactly we think may be going on here. And Bremner, I'll start with you. So clearly she's a victim based upon these allegations. Right. Her son murdered. She has a right to file these charges for wrongful death. It's sort of unusual. I'm trying to follow what exactly is going on here. What are your thoughts about this legal maneuvering by one of the victims?
It may just be a mother's rage, Vinnie. I mean, my first thought in this was, as a prosecutor, I don't want someone filing a civil in my criminal case. I'm having a family doing that. Prosecution, the financial motives come up. Although it's not very high, $30,000 or something like that, but it's not optimal for the prosecution case. But it may be very meaningful to her. And I think there's always guilt for a parent who loses a child in this type of circumstance. It's outrageous. But one where this is her own child, involved with, and he's the one that led to the demise of this beautiful boy. So I think, given that, I don't blame her. It's blind and ridiculous, their relationship, and then to forward.
Let's bring in the professor, Randy Kessler. What are your thoughts here? I'm trying to, because when the story first broke, some people were like, well, Was the mother really held captive? How did she not know her child was dead? And then we've got more of these details. What do you think is going on behind this lawsuit?
I think there are 1,000 things going on. Look, when I read the story, it's like a scripted movie. Artists, life is stranger than fiction. These facts are out there. If you're the prosecutor, yes, you're worried about the civil case going on because they can take depositions, they can disprove evidence, but it might also help the prosecution, right? The prosecution can't go out and take the deposition. They can't take statements of the defendant. But in the civil case, certainly the plaintiff, the mother, can go to the defendant and say, I want to take your deposition. I want to ask you questions under oath. You don't have the right to not testify. You can say, I refuse to testify because it might incriminate me, but you can ask other questions. Where were you on this day? Why didn't you tell me this? It gives a lot of opportunity to develop the case. So sometimes a simultaneous civil proceeding sheds a lot of light on it. And the bottom line is, putting this guy in jail doesn't really help mom. Mom wants closure, and she also needs probably a lot of financial support for herself and her daughter. I don't blame her for filing, and file now, the attention's on it. If he's got any money, he's gonna settle. If not, there's gonna be a whole civil process that helps shed a lot more light on it than the average criminal case.
Rick King, he's looking at the rest of his life in prison. I've seen, sometimes the civil suits are filed in cases where no charges have been brought and the family's angry. We know who did it. We're going to sue them, and we're going to and sometimes that leads to the criminal charges. Sometimes they wait till afterwards. This is a little unusual. I understand she absolutely has a right to do all of this. On the other side of this, though, they can depose her now as well, right? Like his civil attorneys, if he has them, can now depose her as the plaintiff against him. And that could impact the criminal case as well.
Right. And, Vinny, one of the other options is, and what I see mostly in cases like this, is there some sort of stay while the criminal case is going on? Because just as you indicated and the professor indicated earlier, there's depositions that can be taken now in regards to these cases. And you're right, they go both ways. I don't know that this is going to have the kind of impact, because I anticipate that somebody's going to say, whoa, let's not do this until the criminal case is over. More importantly, in terms of a lawsuit, generally you need a tortfeasor, and somebody with the ability to pay. And just looking on the outside, I don't really see that here. So I think this is more strategic than it is monetary.
Great point. That's the other part that confused me. Go ahead, Randy.
Maybe they want to get the money before he spends it on his criminal lawyers. If he's got anything, he's going to have less and less and less, first in line.
Absolutely. Right. All right. They're staying with us. Still ahead. On the docket tonight in Kern County, California, the murder of the Cal City toddlers, Orrin and Orson West. Tonight, the defense on the offensive as the attorneys for the accused murderers, the boys' adoptive parents, go after the DA.
The safeguards of the accused and the fight to preserve those for Trezell and Jacqueline West begin now.
Plus, in Louisville, Kentucky, 4-year-old Serenity McKinney was found murdered. Her mother is locked up and has been charged in the case, but now Catherine McKinney is 7 months pregnant with another child. Tonight's 13th juror question: what should happen to this baby when she's born?
6. Order now.
I'm saddened to announce that the investigation has revealed that Orrin and Orson West are deceased. The investigation has also revealed that they died 3 months before their adoptive parents reported them missing. While the defendants in this case, Trezell and Jacqueline West, are presumed innocent, the securing of a grand jury indictment is a major step in ensuring that there will be justice for Orrin and Orson.
On the docket tonight, the case against the Wests. These are the adoptive parents of the Cal City toddlers, Orrin and Orson West. They have not been found, but their parents have been accused of their murder. And we've been covering this story for a long time now, but just recently the indictment came down and we heard from the DA. The DA was speaking out. Well, now we've heard from the defense team, and the defense going on the offensive, going after the district attorney. Let's take a listen.
Last week, our clients, Mr. and Mrs. West, were arraigned on an indictment of 5 counts, including second-degree murder, and that came as a result of a grand jury convene. There's been great confusion we've seen about the difference here between a grand jury and a trial jury, and the two of those things could not be more different. First, the standard of proof is lower for a grand jury. They need to only determine probable cause, which is one of the lowest legal standards our system holds. They also do not require a unanimous vote by the jurors. The prosecution also has broad discretion in determining how to proceed and doing so by way of indictment. The grand jury process lacks a crucial and important role of our criminal justice system, and that is the accused and their counsel being present during. There is no opportunity to cross-examine any witnesses, and it is basically ran by the district attorney. The state's comment and reliance on this "we have proved to a grand jury" is mere rhetoric. It's used as an insurance to bolster a lopsided indictment. Comments such as this have no place in an actual court of law, where it is 12 individuals who unanimously decide the outcome of this case based on this highest level of burden of proof, which is beyond a reasonable doubt. Statements that have been used by the Kern County District Attorney in her press conference tend to invoke a tidal wave of emotion towards finding guilt, whether substantiated or not, and this will taint a local jury pool and could deny our clients a chance at a fair trial. It's odd that the office held their press conference, made a series of comments which both mis- and disinformed the public, then the following day came and requested a gag order to stop the defense from having an ability to make similar comments. This action is disingenuous, but may also cause change for a change of venue in the future. It is now when the misleads and theater end and the constitutional protections begin. The safeguards of the accused and the fight to preserve those for Trezell and Jacqueline West begin now.
So the question is, did they cross the line? The district attorney, she came out and announced the indictment. I mean, that was the indictment is what it is. I mean, it's an accusation. She didn't get into any of the details of the case. She was extremely careful and precise. And the defense comes out and says it's not fair. Let's bring back in the think tank. What's your take on this, Randy? Is this a sign of strength or desperation from the defense, where they're going after the DA for announcing the indictment that they proved the case to the grand jury?
If I didn't know better, I'd say you used to be a prosecutor or something in a former life, Vinny. You know, you might as well use air quotes. You know, while the defendants are presumed innocent, the way she said it was as if she didn't believe it. There is a presumption of innocence, and she didn't convey that there's a presumption of innocence. She made a mockery of that. I wouldn't be surprised if she's brought up on sanctions or brought in line before the bar. Are you kidding me? She also, to come out and say, well, we've gotten an indictment, that means that they're guilty. That's basically what she's saying, which is not what it means. It means there's probable cause. You might as well next time say, well, the police arrested the guy. He must be guilty because the police saw fit to arrest the person. You know, I think she crossed the line by a long way, not just a little bit over. I think she was far over the line.
And Bremner.
You know, I can see that. I was just thinking when I was a prosecutor one time, I asked the jury, they kept raising the time, and I was a young lawyer, and I said, do you think the defendant was like blown out of a cannon and landed in that chair? We just basically said, come on in, you're going to be tried for robbery. Of course, a mistrial was granted. But the fact is that they've got special duties as prosecutors. They can't just come out and say, you know, if he's indicted, that means guilty, or I think there were other statements made in the case challenged. And under that old case of Shepard versus Maxwell, remember the fugitive was based on that. The defense can comment on the nature of the defense, a lot of latitude, and pretrial publicity generated through the prosecutor to be grounds for review.
Rick King, I've covered a lot of press conferences. This DA would not answer any questions, would not give any specifics. She basically told us what was in the indictment, which is a very public document, and that was it. That was it. It seems like the defense is upset that their clients have been charged with murder. And by the way, Rick, this is a very easy case for them if, in fact, these two are factually true. I mean, if they want to prove their case, the defense, it should be over in 2 minutes, because the allegations are that these children were murdered in September. It wasn't until December that these parents said that they were abducted or went missing, December 20th. And the prosecution says it happened in September. The children are 3 and 4 years old, Rick. Like, do you have one photograph of the kids from October or November or December? Maybe Halloween, maybe Thanksgiving, maybe a birthday, maybe just, oh, they're doing something funny. I mean, you don't have one picture of these kids alive in those 3 months? To me, I mean, the case should be done in 2 minutes if they're factually innocent.
But the reality is the case is supposed to be tried in the courtroom. And what that prosecutor did was she tried it
She announced the indictment. She's not allowed to do that?
You can indict, as you know, you can indict a brown paper bag. What she shouldn't have done is said that we proved it to the grand jury, because the word prove, and I am wholehearted. I think Professor Randy channeled his best Professor Sterling just now, because we talk about the due process that defendants are entitled to, and they're entitled to the presumption of innocence. And for the prosecutor to come out and said that they proved their case to the grand jury it's improper and unethical.
Well, I'll tell you what, Randy, to prove that they didn't kill these children, all they have to do is show me one photograph. I mean, you can go to any parent of a 3 and 4 year old and say, hey, do you have any pictures of your kids? You'll be there for 3 days rolling through every picture that they've taken.
So let's just keep trying to prosecute them in public, right? The court of public opinion, you're going to get them found guilty. But, Rick, we're bonded here, because you got to prove it to a jury within the confines of the law, not in front of a microphone with a bunch of people.
I get it. But if it's your children, by the way, folks, Randy should be the last person talking about this. Go on his Facebook feed, and you will see 10 gazillion pictures of his beautiful daughter. I mean, the bottom line here, Randy, is that if you are a parent, a loving parent like you are, everyone's got a cell phone these days. If you go through Randy's cell phone, you're going to see, of course he does. Of course he does, because he's a great parent. I mean, if your child was alive, I could show you a picture from last week, the week before, at least one picture from 3 months. One picture for 3 months, and is all they have to show to prove this case.
I'm going on a cyber vacation now. We got to be on social media.
But that's the bottom line, right? You've got pictures. We all have pictures of our children. I mean,
on behalf of my client Randy, I'm going to say that that's still for the prosecution to do. The three of us on this side of the square, we're criminal defense lawyers.
I get it. But if you've got someone who's factually innocent and you could prove it by showing one picture, just show.
Not my responsibility. That's not my responsibility.
All right, take a look, folks. We've got a big readiness hearing coming up May 13th in this case, and we've got a trial date set, May 23rd. We'll see if they're ready on May 13th for trial on May 23rd. It could happen. It could happen. It's California. I can't keep track of those trials out there. All right, when we come back, we've got another mother accused of the murder of her daughter, 4 years old. That's Serenity McKinney. Her mom was in court. Her mom is 7 months pregnant now. What should happen to that child? What should happen to that baby? We'll talk about that when we come back. There is the missing poster for Serenity McKinney. When she was missing, she was found. She was no longer alive, just 4 years old. And now her mother and her mother's boyfriend are being held and charged with the murder of this little angel. Well, Catherine McKinney, Serenity's mother, was in court the other day, and her attorney dropped what I believe was shocking news. Take a listen.
Prior to her arrest, she was employed. She's certainly employable if released and would find work. In addition, and most importantly, Judge, Ms. McKinney is 7 months pregnant. She is nearing the end of her pregnancy and will require regular appointments with a physician.
7 months pregnant. Wow. Let's bring back in our think tank tonight. Still with us, Randy Kessler, Ann Bremner, Rick King. This is an incredible development. It's our 13th juror comment of the day. Let's go to our comment of the day from Kim. What should happen to this baby? And here's what Kim had to say. This baby needs to be handed directly to Child Protective Services or to a loving family member. The baby should be given a chance to live a safe and normal life. Randy Kessler, family law attorney, what should happen to this baby? Mom is being accused of murdering one child already, now 7 months pregnant.
There are 100 answers, but they all lead to the same place, which is that I agree with the viewer. It should go to somebody else. You know, when you murder a child, you forfeit your right to be a parent. That's my, moral analogy. But the legal analogy is, you know what? To terminate parental rights, you have to do something horrible. This is something horrible. This qualifies. A judge should terminate her right to any children she has or will have. I agree with the viewer. You don't get a second chance in this game. This is a one-time around. You mistreat a child and kill a child, you don't get the right to have a possible effect on any other children.
Ashley tonight writes, I wouldn't think they can terminate rights unless there is a guilty verdict, but it is a scary thought that she could end up with the opportunity for history to repeat itself. Hopefully there is a responsible, loving family member to care for the baby until her trial concludes. She clearly does not need to be released just because she is pregnant. And Rick King, that was one of the arguments being made by the defense. It's like a mitigating factor that someone accused of child murder is pregnant. That's why we let him out on bond.
Just skipping back to my old police days, I had a defendant who actually gave birth and she told the story at sentencing, one hand handcuffed to the gurney as she was giving birth. So we don't let them out, especially for things like that. And I would acquiesce to the professor, but I would guess that there's going to be some dependency proceedings during the course, starting now that they know she's pregnant, up until the time when she gives birth, to determine whether or not she's fit to be a parent.
Betty tonight, she should not be allowed to have other children to kill. I don't trust CPS to do the right thing either. They give children back to parents all the time that have been abused. Ann Bremner, your thoughts about this very complicated situation now?
Well, I agree with Betty, and we had the Cox case out here. Children who represent the family were killed by their father, and the jury returned a verdict of $100 million during the pandemic against the state. So, but the state can act quickly. They can act on an emergency basis and try and make sure they have access. I hope there's a family member, frankly. Finally, I had the Mary Kay Letourneau civil case out here. She got pregnant twice with her victim, and I represented the police in that case. But she actually did breastfeeding and care for kids in prison. She served 7 years, and family members took kids. Billy was only, I think at that time, 14. So, you can still go to jail if you're having babies.
And what was that?
Definitely be in jail.
What was that criminal's name?
Mary Kay Letourneau.
Mary Kay Letourneau. Remember her
you remember?
Well. Oh, I remember her very, very well.
Yeah.
Pat tonight would depend on the verdict in this trial. Randy, do you think the judge is going to wait for the verdict to decide what to do with that baby?
I think there's too much risk for the newborn right now. I think if she's acquitted, and that's a big if, then it's not all's not lost. But for now, I don't think she's going to have access, and she's certainly not going to get out of jail. Otherwise, you'd be seeing people getting pregnant all the time when they're accused of things like this. If it was a get out of jail free card, that's not a precedent we want to set.
All right, Jennifer, a little more extreme here tonight. The baby should be taken from her, and she should be sterilized. Rick King, does that ever happen in our system?
God, I hope not. It should not, and I hope that it doesn't. Yes. Does she need to have another child? Absolutely not. Does she need to have access to this one? Not right now, at least. We need to find out what happened and get to the bottom of it.
All right, great job as always. Rick King and Bremner, Randy Kessler, thank you so much. Appreciate your time tonight. We'll see you again real soon. Okay, folks, when we come back, one of our unsolved cases, big development tonight. The newlywed couple out of Moab, Utah. There they are, Kylan Schulte, Crystal Turner. We're going to speak with Kylan's father, and the private investigator has some big information tonight.
Call or go online now.
In Moab, Utah, a huge update in the murder of newlyweds Kylan Schulte and Crystal Turner. Is there now an exact time of death in this double murder. Tonight, Kylan's father and the family's private investigator join us live with the latest.
There 100% is a murderer on the loose.
In tonight's unsolved case file in Moab, California, the murder of Nikki Benedict in 1967. Someone knows something about this stabbing, and tonight we're asking for your help in solving this case.
Imagine spending your lifetime dealing with this kind of violent murder.
In Phoenix, Arizona, an intense moment as a suspect opens fire on police in a chaotic situation. We break down the video with our own law enforcement experts. And in St. Petersburg, Florida, an officer spots a driver going the wrong way towards a pack of runners in a 10K. We'll take a closer look at the officer's heroic actions during crime time. Buckle your seatbelts. This hour of closing arguments starts right now. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us on Closing Arguments. This hour, we've got a major update in a case that we have been tracking, a case that we've been asking for your help in solving. It's a case involving newlyweds who were shot and killed in Moab, Utah. When I say that word Moab, you probably think of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie. That's where we got that body cam footage of that couple when they were there. Coincidentally, right around the same time they were there, Kylan Schulte and Crystal Turner were shot and killed. Now, Lauren Steinbrecher, great reporter with our affiliate KSTU in Salt Lake City, Utah, has more on this story for us tonight.
With positive vibes and nothing but joy in her smile, to Bridget Calvert, her niece Kylan Schulte was a ray of light.
Her having such a beautiful soul, to see it complemented with someone like Crystal, that they could really enjoy life and do it together.
Kylan and her wife, Crystal Turner, got married 4 months ago, loved living van life, and called the outdoors around Moab home. Many people knew the couple around town, which is why when the two were no-call, no-shows to work, it was clear something was wrong. The family, all out of state, say police searched, but it wasn't until an acquaintance drove out to the South Mesa area in the La Salle Mountains that they discovered the horrifying news.
She was on the phone with my brother when she pulled up to the car. She looks at the site and sees a body and tells my brother that he sent a text that said it's Kylan and Crystal.
The Grand County Sheriff's Office confirmed the two women were shot and killed, they believe, by someone else.
The evidence that we've gathered at this time, that's what it's led us to believe was an isolated incident.
That's all they can say for now. Bridget explained how friends told them the couple mentioned a man creeping them out near their campsite.
Saturday that they met up with, they said they were going to go move. They were going to pack up and move their campsite. That it was like he was still creeping them out.
The family is hoping someone can help them find answers.
What is very uncomforting is that there 100% is a murderer on the loose.
A murderer who took 2 lives away, but the family says will never put out the light, the love of Kylan and Crystal.
We're going to let their love light shine, that they had the most beautiful love, and that light is not stopping.
Okay, folks, if you have any information on who killed Kylan Schulte and Crystal Turner, pick up that phone, call the Grand County Sheriff's Office. This is an open case. No one has been arrested. That means there's a killer out there. 435-259-8115. 435-259-8115. Now, as I mentioned at the top, we've got some new information tonight, and this may very well focus the information that investigators need and who may be able to help find this killer tonight. Let's bring in our guests. Joining me tonight in Redlands, California, retired police commander, host of the Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King is with us. He is down there, bottom right. Also, in Salt Lake City, Utah, the private investigator hired by Kyle and Schulte's family, Jason Jensen, he is right next to me. And with us in San Francisco, California, Kyle and Schulte's father, Sean Paul, also with us. Welcome to you all. Thank you for being with us. Sean Paul, our deepest condolences to your family. We've been covering this story from the beginning, hoping to help you find an answer and get the justice, but really we feel so, our deepest, saddest condolences for you tonight. But I want to begin with your investigator, Jason Jensen, who folks are very familiar with on our show here. Jason, I understand there is some information tonight that makes this much more precise in where we are focusing our attention. What can you tell us about the murder of Kylan and Crystal tonight?
Sure, yeah, I'd love to. I mean, for months now, we've been talking about a date range from the 12th to the 14th and really asking the public to, come forward with any video or anything they may have collected over that time period. But now we've had an update where we're more focused on just the late hour morning of the 14th, which was the Saturday of August, where what we're hearing, we've been hearing rumors for a while now that that there was, at 11:35 that morning, there were gunshots heard and screams. So we didn't know whether to accept that, to believe that or not. But this morning, from a more reliable source, closer to the case, we've heard that indeed that was what was being collected. And that, so now what we want is anybody that was in the mountain, those Sal Mountains that day, specifically around the noon hour, they may have traveled by this guy and maybe there was an erratic driver or somebody that cut him off or something bizarre about another vehicle that was bizarre that caught their attention. Regardless if there's video or not, we would like them to come forward and describe the vehicle for us.
This is huge. Sean Paul, your thoughts tonight and looking for help from the public in what type of information you are looking for.
Vinnie, thanks for doing such a great job of covering the case. I watch you all the time. I respect you and your show. Thanks for doing this. I do appreciate it. The family's kind of a little bit shocked to find out the timestamp today. Okay, that's news to us. So emotionally, it was a very trying day today for myself. As far as what we hope to gain from this new knowledge, it's to fine-tune our search criteria so that the millions of tourists that pass through Moab can fine-tune the time that they're trying to look for a vehicle or dash cam footage, etc. So, I had assumed this whole time for 6 months now that it happened in the middle of the night.
And now we know it was the middle of the day. Absolutely.
Broad daylight.
Broad daylight. It's scary and it's disturbing on many different levels. Jason Jensen, before I get to Mike King here, I know that you also shot some video for us as we take a look at it. Tell us what we're looking at, and again, remind folks who may be watching tonight what we are looking for. Let's take a look at that video. We'll roll that video, and you tell us what we're looking at. I think we have it. There we go. Go ahead, Jason.
This is drone footage from a Twitter account user that has been really close to the case, has been following along, doing a great job, really getting the word out there. His handle on Twitter is Del2000. And what this is actual aerial footage. In the lower right corner, we had just passed the actual crime scene. And this is just a skyward view of the surroundings. You can see that is the county road that travels nearby, and it really shows the mountainous, the really isolated nature of this case. And right here in the lower corner is where the crime actually occurred. So not much happens here. And now we're coming up to the main, the LaSalle Loop Road. This is the road that most of the travelers would be traveling on. There, for instance, is a camper going up towards Geyser Pass. And if you go to the right from here, would actually be to the Whispering Oaks Ranch, which is where a wedding on the day of the 14th was occurring. See, and this is another angle. This is as you come down towards the camp where that fifth well is about the location where Kylan and Crystal's Kia Sorento was parked, and then just over to the left of there was their tent, and then to the right of that second clump grove of trees is where we believe that the creeper dude was camped at.
Mike King with us. He's not in Utah tonight, but that's where he usually is. He knows all these areas very, very well. Mike, your thoughts tonight about this new development, the time of day, 11:35 in the morning, this double homicide takes place. The significance of that to you, and do you think that could help the public in, hey, listen, oh, wait a minute, I was there around noon?
It absolutely can help the public in trying to go back and look at video that they might have in their vehicles, GoPros if they're out hiking, or folks like this drone pilot who happened to be up catching information. Now, the thing that's really interesting to me, and Jason is to be credited for really bird dogging this thing, is that 11 o'clock in the morning is something that would be more significant because of the organizational level of a crime like this. And of course, the way that that crime scene looked and some of the things that we've been able to see and talk about would really suggest that it was a pretty disorganized crime scene. Things fell apart pretty quickly, and what happened didn't fit this fantasy that the predator had in mind when all of this happened. What this is going to really mean for us in the community is that this offender most likely left the area in a disorganized manner, probably really driving quickly, erratically. One of the things I noticed in Jason's video was that there looked like there were good cell towers in the area, so I suspect that there was good broadband connectivity that might be helpful in also being able to capture and share. So the question is, will people go back and re-examine, if they were there on the 14th, all of their video, their home photos and video, and see if they come up with something that just kind of gives them a little bit of an itch? And if so, turn it over to the sheriff's office.
And everybody who was at that wedding, please check your phones, make the call. You may have seen something. I want to go back to Sean Paul. Sean, explain, and this is what I ask a lot of family members to do in this part of the program, but I think it's important. Explain to folks watching tonight what it would mean for you to get that answer, that someone tonight maybe goes through their photos, their videos on their phone, and they see something, and they find something, and they make that call that helps catch a killer.
I can't put it in words, Vinny. I cannot put it in words how much it would help me start to be able to move forward. This is 6 months of torture. It's every day I have to relive this. If someone came forward and said, oh, heck, at high noon on Saturday, there was this guy, I thought maybe he was on his cell phone and he was looking at his cell and he almost ran me off the road, and he describes a vehicle to someone who just kind of stuck out in their mind that, wow, right about high noon, geez, we were going up the mountain to go goof up at Warner Lake, and we saw a car come around the corner, pretty crazy. Well, what was that car? I mean, it would mean the world to me. I can't even tell you, Vinny. I can't express to you how much that would do for me and the families.
For those of us who never met Kylan, we've seen the amazing pictures. from what must have been a really amazing day for her. Tell us a little bit about her. And
You mean the pictures from the wedding?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, Kylan was great. She was really sweet. She was very attentive. Kylan was a professional at listening. She actually paid attention to what people were telling her, and then she recalled it. So she was a treat to visit with. You know, Crystal and her had an incredible relationship. They really blossomed together. The two of them combined ended up with the strength and power of three people. It's amazing to see this kind of a relationship. For me, you know, I can only compare it to my parents, but I mean, Kylan and Crystal's love is something that you only see it once in a lifetime. Definitely it was short-lived, but it was a super bright light that, you know, we hope it won't go out.
Mike King, the host of Profiling Evil, and I bring that up because it could only be evil that would do what was done that day. Broad daylight to take the lives of these two women who just get married. They're living an adventurous life. I mean, you can tell how happy they were. And then living, it was the first time I was introduced to the van life, that, hey, you know, you don't have to live a traditional life like everyone does. You know, they wake up, go to work, and do all of that. But, you know, you're in touch with nature. And to take that away, this is someone that is out there now today, and from my perspective, is extremely dangerous as they come.
Oh, holy cow, I have to agree. And it is so important that the community, especially the community around that market, the McDonald's, that hiking area and that camping area, really think about the personalities they were coming across, because this is an individual who is really angry, for one thing. I mean, this was very personal. It was over the top in the assault itself, and there's a level of anger there, Vinny, whether it has something to do with the same-sex relationship, or something to do with the environment that they're in, or mental illness, or drug-induced. As law enforcement picks this thing apart, they're going to come up with those little interesting pieces of information that help them as they look at this broad pool of possible suspects that I hope they have. And as they look at the behavior that was used in this the commission of this crime, the way in which it was committed, the location, the level of organization, like I talked about earlier, I think what we'll see is that kind of like a gold panner sifting for gold, that as they sift through the behavior and the physical and forensic evidence, that someone will rise to the top. But without the public stepping in on this one, it's going to be a really tough challenge.
All right. Mike King, I know you're staying with us. Sean Paul, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Again, our thoughts and prayers are with your family. And you know, and Jason knows, we are going to stay on the story and keep a spotlight on it until you get the answers and the justice.
Thank you.
That your family deserves. Jason Jensen, always thank you so much. We really appreciate it. When we come back, folks, we're going to open up tonight's unsolved case file. We're going to take it back to 1967. A family searching for answers since 1967. Who killed Nikki Benedict?
delay. Call our helpline now.
Welcome back. Time to open up tonight's unsolved case file, and we take you all the way back to 1967, the murder of Nikki Benedict. Mimi Ekela from our great affiliate KGTV in San Diego has the story.
Imagine knowing that your sister or your mother or your father, and Nikki's not the only one, there's a lot of unsolved cases. Imagine spending your lifetime dealing with this kind of violent murder that makes no sense. There's no motive. Imagine living your life like that. You would want to know.
Mariana Basila was only 5 years old when her 14-year-old sister, Nikki Alexandra Benedict, was walking home from a friend's house and was critically stabbed, then left to die in a field off of Poway Road. An 11-year-old boy found her suffering. It was only about 6:30 in the evening. Sheriff's deputies and medics tried to save Benedict's life, but she died once arriving at the hospital. When this crime happened, witnesses reported seeing a young man running from the scene. Investigators tell us almost every teenage boy in Poway was interviewed at the time, but detectives could not find a connection. No one has been arrested for her murder. Detectives didn't want to give away any information regarding DNA or any other evidence linked to the knife in this case. They understand the killer may no longer be alive, but are still reaching out to the public, hoping anyone with helpful information will come forward. There's also a $1,000 reward for helpful information leading to an arrest.
All right, folks, I've seen older cases solved. It can be solved. Someone knows something. Here is the number, 858-285-6330. 858-285-6330. That's the San Diego County Sheriff's Department Homicide Unit. If you have any information, please come forward tonight. Still with us, retired police commander, host of the Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King. Also joining us now, former commander with the United States Marshal Service, Lenny DePaul is with us. And joining us by phone, a special guest, Nikki Benedict's sister, Mariana Basila, is with us as well. Thank you all. Mariana, I want to begin with you. This case still not solved. Have there been any updates since we last spoke? Have you gotten any information from investigators that, hey, we're working on something right now?
No, I haven't heard anything at all. Nothing yet.
And going back in time, this was a case where someone did see someone running from away from the scene, Mariana. Was there any description of this person?
We're not privy to that kind of detail in a murder investigation. Pretty much information goes one way. So anything else would just be rumors, basically. But, you know, I don't see this getting solved by more clues. I see this getting solved by somebody speaking up who actually knows something. And that's what's critical.
Absolutely. And Mariana, I'm with you. And someone does know something here. Lenny DePaul, your thoughts tonight on this case. It goes back to 1967, but it's clear that somebody knows something.
Absolutely. I agree with Mariana. I mean, it's going to be getting that word out there. Social media is important, what you folks are doing. Maybe get a new set of eyes on this case and leave no stones unturned. I mean, the way this thing went down, this is 54, I think it'll be 55 years on May 1st. There needs to be some closure done with this case sooner than later. So, again, I'm hoping these investigators are doing their due diligence, which I'm sure they are. And but reward money helps. The streets talk. People are out there. I mean, somebody, I think, knows something. So, yes, I agree with Mariana. I believe the public is going to help immensely with this case.
Mike King, this is another one of those small town murders that has gone unsolved for so many years. The one thing that has changed through time, though, is the technology from anything that was recovered at the scene. And we know we're talking about DNA, and we've seen it happen.
Yes. In fact, I think about this potential predator somewhere, even if we were to give him 10 years on top of this child, he would be about 75 years old right now. Chances are he's still alive. Hopefully that guilt has not left his shoulders and the weight only gets heavier, and that maybe he would get the courage to step up and help Mariana and her family solve this mystery. But this one really can have a lucky moment in it. DNA has changed with what we see in CODIS and inmates who are in prison, or other pieces of DNA that comes through genealogical DNA. We see these cases being solved every single day, so we hold great hope on that. But then we got to go back and look at this case from a behavioral perspective. And you know I love to do this, Vinnie, but I go back and I think about this. What was the initial contact site? Because this child leaves her friend and does something a little out of the norm. Instead of taking a bus home, she walks through a big old vacant field that's maybe about a mile distance between the last place she's seen and her home. And along that route, that's when the assault happened. So did this individual pick her up along the way and follow her into the field? Or was it simply opportunistic and this was someone crossing by? But we know the evidence suggests that this young woman put up a big fight. And actually, from what I've been able to read, and maybe that can be confirmed, crawled and tried to make it to the roadway. I mean, this is one tough little girl, and there has got to be evidence there that hopefully, if preserved, could lead to identifying a suspect at some point. And if not, I agree. Somebody knows something, and it's time to step up.
Lenny, from your experience, what is it that gets people to speak? Because we've seen it happen through the years, and sometimes it's 6 months later, sometimes it's 60 years later. What takes place that has people finally come forward? Because things like this, I believe more than one person knows what happened here.
I agree, Vinny. I agree with Mike as well. I mean, this is a sexual a psychopath that I'm sure met resistance. And again, Nikki, there was no signs of rape. However, there were visible scars on her knees and her elbows and whatnot. And she put up a hell of a fight. To get somebody to come forward that knows something, whoever this person was, as the years gone on, I'm sure there was conversation that was had somewheres, and somebody I'm sure heard something. But it's old-fashioned police work. Hit the bricks, Q&A and people. Let's talk to some old witnesses. Leave no stones unturned, like I said. But you got to kind of blow the dust off of this cold case and maybe get a new set of eyes and ears on this thing, and fire up social media. Do things like what you're doing, Vinny, and get the word out there. And hopefully somebody's sitting back in their late 60s, early 70s and says, wait a minute, the old adage is sometimes better to be lucky than good. And this might be the case here. But, yeah, they got to bring this thing home.
Mariana, how important would this be for you and your family to get the answer and get the justice?
It's a really hard thing to put words to, mostly because that's a really emotional question. It would mean the difference between living with soul-crushing questions, just having an answer to understanding why. We can't change the why, but at least we'd like to know why. But I wanted to add, one of the investigators mentioned about her putting up a fight. She did indeed, and she dragged herself about 50 yards to the street, and even that in itself is something that I have a wondering about, that whoever did it didn't continue to pursue her, that she was able to still try. The person took off, and that in itself, I don't know, there's something interesting about that. And then where did they go? They must have known she was still alive at that point. So there's still different angles as to some of those questions, at least trying to understand how everything happened. But it would mean the world to us to at least be able to move forward instead of always sitting waiting for that answer.
Mariana, I can hear the heartbreak in your voice, and our thoughts are with you tonight and always. And we'll stay on the story. We'll continue to do it. And then I hope at some point we have the conversation and we're talking about an arraignment, and we're talking about a first appearance, and then we're getting ready to cover the trial here on Court TV. Mariana, thank you so much. Mike King, Lenny DePaul, thank you both as well. Appreciate your time and your insight. We'll have you back again real soon. Still ahead. In Phoenix, Arizona, an intense moment as a suspect opens fire on police in a chaotic situation. We break down the video with our own law enforcement experts. And in St. Petersburg, Florida, an officer spots a driver going the wrong way towards a pack of runners in a 10K. We'll take a closer look at the officer's heroic actions during crime time.
.334.
It is crime time here on Closing Arguments. Let's bring in tonight's guests. Joining me, Assistant Chief Jailer, former Chief of the Major Crime Section, Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee III. Adam served as a police officer for 30 years. He oversaw homicide cases, robberies, special victims units, and a gun assault team. Also with us, former police officer Lance LaRusso. Lance has over 36 years of experience in law enforcement. He has trained civilians, officers, and supervisors as a firearms and defense tactics instructor. He is certified in hostage negotiation, and he is the author of When Cops Kill and Blue News. Great to have you both back. Lance, Lieutenant Colonel, let's begin with our first story. This is an intense, chaotic situation out of the Phoenix PD. Man shoots officers and a baby is rescued.
Phoenix 911, where is your emergency?
It's a gunshot wound. There's a gunshot wound.
Where?
We got an intruder. We had an intruder.
So you shot an intruder?
Baby, wake up. Wake up, baby.
Hello, is somebody there to talk to me?
Huh?
Who got shot?
Wake up. It's a gunshot wound. We had an intruder.
I got that. Can I talk to one person? Who got shot?
My wife.
Come on, bro. Come on.
Who's all in the house?
Huh?
Who's all in the house?
It's me.
Who's you?
I've been shot. 999.
At about 2:36 a.m., Lobley's brother came out of the front door holding a baby. Officers did not know this man's involvement in the incident, so they instructed him to put the baby down and walk backwards toward the officers. He followed their directions and was detained. Here's video that was captured by a photographer and later obtained by the Phoenix Police Department. This video provides a much better perspective on this portion of the incident because the related body-worn camera video is obscured or does not clearly depict the incident. During this round of shots, Jones was inside the house at the top of the stairs, which are directly inside the open front door.
I'm shot.
Officers from the Special Assignments Unit, or SAU, arrived on scene and developed a plan using armored vehicles and shields to rescue the baby. This occurred at about 3:30 a.m.
I need it. Here, come here, baby. Come here, baby. Go.
The officers eventually entered the residence and located Jones inside, dead, from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. They also located the adult female victim, Shatifa Lobley, dead from a gunshot wound.
Incredibly tragic story, dangerous, chaotic. You're trying to negotiate with a shooter here, and you've got to handle this delicate scene. Let's bring back in Lance LaRusso, Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee III. Lance, I'll begin with you. Your thoughts about this situation and what officers had to deal with here.
You know, there's a lot to unpack here. One of the things that we know, last year we had ambushes were up 115% of law enforcement officers. That's what this man did. If you go into the background of this man, he's got a 14-year criminal history. He also is a self-professed gang member. He was luring the officer in and trying to kill as many cops as he could. He actually shot 9 officers. 2 sets of officers put themselves in danger to rescue a baby. I mean, this is what they do. And remember, that armored vehicle saved a lot of officers' lives. This is what people were complaining about officers having a few years ago. I mean, these officers did a remarkable job with an incredibly difficult situation.
Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee III, your thoughts about what we just saw?
It's horrific, but as Lance said, this young man had an extensive criminal history. I believe he planned on dying that night. I don't believe that he thought for 1 minute that he was going to get out of there alive. The suicide that he eventually completed was something that was probably already on his mind, and he probably wanted to take out some police officers as well. It was very fortunate that none of them were struck fatally when they attempted to rescue the baby. So that's what we can be thankful for.
Yeah, and Lance, that part of the story is huge, that they were able to get that baby out and save the baby.
Yeah, 3 officers were shot in Joplin, Missouri tonight. One of them died. You know, these ambushes on law enforcement are getting out of control. But, you know, what's interesting, those officers stayed on the scene. They gathered more people. They got a tactical response. They used an armored vehicle. They used all the tools they had, and they weren't going to give up.
All right, Lance LaRusso, Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee the third, staying with us. When we come back, we've got more crime time and some video out of Ohio where officers using the eye in the sky to try to track a 65-year-old woman with dementia who was wandering in the snow.
Try it free for 30 days.
Welcome back to our Crime Time segment. Still with us, Lance LaRusso and Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee III. Next story comes to us from the Ohio State Patrol and an air unit there spotting a missing woman with dementia.
I've got somebody out here in the woods for you to check out. I can't make out if it's a female, but they're just standing there. So I would assume this will more than likely be our individual we're looking for. Yeah, it looks like they're making contact with her now. Chapter 2, that was her. Fantastic job. We really appreciate you. Hey, no problem at all. I can, if you don't need anything, I can leave, but I can keep the area lit up a little bit until they at least get back to the cruiser. If you could, that'd be fantastic. Okay, no problem. Just let me know when you guys are clear and back to your cruiser. You got everybody accounted for. She is inside the squad and being treated. Again, we really appreciate the help. Thank you so much.
All right, how critical to find someone quickly. You've got some harsh weather there, and the use of the eye in the sky there. Lieutenant Colonel Adam Lee III.
Vinny, it is imperative beyond words. I can only imagine the elation that those officers felt. I've been in their shoes many, many times when I've been on searches of people with Alzheimer's. But people with Alzheimer's often get desensitized, so they'll forget to go out of the house with a coat on when it's the dead of winter. And so that's why it's very, very important to find them before hypothermia may set in, which could bring death. And it's one of those things that you have to be really careful if you're a guardian of an Alzheimer's patient at nighttime, because sometimes they experience something called sundowning effect, which causes them to become even more disoriented when nighttime comes.
Lance LaRusso, this could have gone really badly for the family and for that woman, but the teamwork of officers out in Ohio finding her, amazing.
You know, this is Summit County, Ohio. It's northern Ohio, very close to the lake there. She could have died overnight very easily. And Adam's absolutely right. You know, when you get a lost child, a lost elderly person, a lost disabled person, it's all hands on deck, and it can be heartbreaking. You know, when it starts getting really cold like that, you actually have to worry about the lives of your rescuers. So time is of the essence, and a helicopter in a situation like that, infrared, any other types of devices they have, they're going to save the day. And a lot of times you will not find those people without the assistance of an air unit or a tracking dog that can help you.
All right, final story tonight. This one is amazing. It's a quick video, so you got to pay attention, folks. An officer drives their cruiser into a drunk driver's path. Let's take a look. Extremely dangerous maneuver. How dangerous is it? How necessary was it? Lance LaRusso, what you don't see in the video is that there's a pack of runners in a 10K that were just behind and in the field of the target of that drunk driver. Go ahead, Lance.
When you see that video, if you're looking for the true definition of a hero, that's exactly what it looks like. If you look at the last second, she turns her vehicle so the passenger side of her vehicle will take the brunt of the impact, but guardians don't do that. Warriors do. She put her life at risk and probably knew the likelihood of her dying in that wreck at a 50, 60 mile an hour impact was very high, but the people that were strangers to her were more important than her own life.
Lieutenant Colonel, a 10K, there were a ton of runners back there. All their lives were at risk, but for the actions of this officer.
Yeah, Vinny, I would call that the most altruistic move I've ever seen in my life. That officer was selfless, and she had to know that she stood to be damaged to her body, her for the rest of her life. She could have been paralyzed. She could have been killed. All of that had to go through her mind at that very moment, but she didn't think about that. She thought about those people whose lives she probably saved.
Absolutely. And Lance, not all these stories get heard. What people don't realize necessarily, and it's part of the reason we do this segment, is to show the full gamut of day-to-day policing. And, you can go from approaching someone with a gun to something like finding someone wandering through the woods with dementia, and here you've got a 10K, moments that you can't necessarily prepare for, but you do have to prepare for because it's part of the job day in and day out.
And they are very well trained. It's one of the reasons I wrote the book Blue News and donate the profits to law enforcement charities. Law enforcement needs to be better at telling these stories so the public can really understand the day-to-day and not the snippet of video that goes worldwide when someone's trying to push an agenda. These are heroes, and they're doing this work every day.
Well, Lance LaRusso, Lieutenant Colonel, Adam Lee III, thank you both so much. Always great to have you on and great to have your perspective on these stories. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
All right, folks, when we come back, we've got a missing child tonight. So again, I'm going to need your help, your attention to bring this child home tonight. We'll be back with more right after this. Don't go anywhere.
The Real Deal at drivetime.com.
And tomorrow on Court TV, our continuing coverage of the Tara Grinstead murder case, a big hearing. Bo Dukes may be testifying. He may be implicated by the defense in that case, so make sure you tune in for that. Now, before we go, I have a picture I need to show you of a missing child. This is Liliana Barnes, just 13 years old, missing from Springfield, Massachusetts since January 28th. Take a look at Liliana. If you see her, please pick up the phone. You can call 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Springfield Police Department. That's it for tonight, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night. And as always, don't forget to hug the kids.
This program is based upon a true story and contains reenactments. Portions of this program may be disturbing to audience members. Viewer discretion is advised.
On a hot summer evening in 1992, neighbors heard the familiar sound of an argument coming from the Campano residence.